Be cool, be kind, be classy. The cupcakes so sweet and sexy. Have fun and enjoy the journey. Just have a good attorney. No big whoop, no biggie. She lives near New York City. And not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw. Learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade, sipping motions of lemonade. Cool heads will prevail, kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Stack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish and Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Meshegas. Ridiculous that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Proset, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcakes sweet and sassy. And not just a YouTube show. When you know. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Hello, my friends. Hello, and thanks so much for coming to hang out with me this afternoon. The news on this story is breaking so quickly, fast and furiously, that I don't even know where to start with it yet. But Mark Bederow is going to be here in a little while to help me out with that. So we are going to go from there. Have you seen Mark Bederow had an op-ed published in the New York Times today regarding this case? And he texted me this morning at about 7:30 a.m. and he said, turn on Fox News. You may see somebody you recognize in a couple of minutes. He was on Fox News this morning talking about Luigi Mangione. The New York Times published his, I guess it's not an op-ed. I guess they're calling it an essay. We're going to take a look at that. Because as you know, he was formerly with the Manhattan DA's office for many, many years. And so he knows all about the inner workings there and such. So he's going to add his 2 cents to this whole Luigi Mangione debacle. This morning, Luigi Mangione appeared in a Blair County, Pennsylvania court for an extradition hearing. He waived extradition. At first he was going to fight extradition, but he wound up waiving extradition this morning. He was quickly escorted out of there with his Pennsylvania lawyer being chased by reporters, giving a couple of comments, but not too many. They whisked him into an NYPD chopper, and they flew him to Long Island, where they landed about an hour ago at Long Island MacArthur Airport. And then they got into another helicopter, and they brought him into New York City. And there is, why is there a dot on my face? I don't know. Is there a dot on my face? What are you talking about? Maybe your screen is dirty. Check your screen. I don't know. And then now this is the scene outside federal court. They've dropped some federal charges. In the meantime, I've got the federal complaint for us to look at that just hit the presses about, 10 minutes ago. So some new federal charges have been added. As you know, or maybe you don't know, Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan district attorney, had added some special enhancements to the murder charges to make it first degree with regard to terrorism and stuff. And that is exactly what Mark Bederow's opinion piece was about in the New York Times today. So let's take a look. Let's take a look first at the footage a little bit earlier of Mangione's travels from Pennsylvania. This just happened about like an hour and a half ago. I mean, I've been planning this show all morning and I had to keep changing my outline because everything keeps changing. People think Luigi is a hero. People are getting tattoos. Hold on one second. Mark needs something from me. All right. Again, let me give me 1 second. Un momento, por favore. And we found that, or I found anyway, that his Mangione, they pronounce it Mangione. And the reason I know that is because Nico Mangione, who is the cousin of Luigi, is he's a politician in Maryland. And that's how he pronounces it, because I found a video of his in which Nico Mangione is trying to get the death penalty reinstated in Maryland, oddly enough, a couple of months ago. Let's take a look at this. We'll just see some footage of him getting into the chopper and leaving the courthouse in Pennsylvania. And this happened just a little bit earlier this morning.
Cover the latest that we know in regards to the investigation of the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Taking a look here at a tweet from our very own Josh Breslow, as we're seeing that some of the court sketches have been revealed here from a court hearing that Mangione had earlier today in Pennsylvania. Now, we saw moments ago when he touched down in New York. They're ready to face new federal charges. I do want to head out to some of our coverage from Fox 5 in New York just before he departed in a helicopter. But first, let's get back to some of these new charges that Mangione is facing. And I do want to play back some of the video that we had where we see him entering.
Shout out to this Pennsylvania sketch artist. We love the sketch artists. It's a dying art. There were no cameras in the courtroom this morning in Pennsylvania. There will be no cameras today in federal court in New York. And I imagine he has to be arraigned in state court as well. So in New York, we don't have cameras in the courtroom, so there will be no cameras at all today. And we're going to rely on documents, and we're going to rely on the news clips, and we're going to rely on me and Bederow to give you guys the straight dope. So this sketch artist, his name is Dave Krug, Krug, as you can see. And we love our sketch artists.
Inside of that helicopter. Taking a look here at some of that footage, you can see there Luigi Mangione going inside of a helicopter escorted there by members from the New York City Police Department. So according to the latest reporting, the alleged CEO killer facing new federal charges of murder, stalking, and weapons charges. And that's according to a complaint unsealed Thursday. Mangione agreed.
No federal terrorism charges. We're going to go over the complaint in a few minutes.
To return to New York to face a state murder charge Thursday at a morning court appearance in Pennsylvania, where he was arrested last week after 5 days on the run. It was unclear when he would be in court on those federal charges. After his Pennsylvania court appearance, he was immediately turned over to at least a dozen New York Police Department officers who were in the courtroom and quickly led him to a waiting SUV. He then boarded a small.
Yeah, at least a dozen NYPD officers in the courtroom in Pennsylvania. Huge presence. They were there. They were ready to take him. And as you can see, it's a NYPD copter, Air, Sea, and Rescue from Pennsylvania to Long Island, MacArthur Airport.
Plane used by the NYPD and was bound for the New York area, where you see there he just made his landing a few minutes ago. The federal complaint charges him with 2 counts of stalking and 1 count each of murder through use of a firearm and a firearms offense. A courtroom had been set aside in a Manhattan federal courthouse for Mangione's appearance, and an overflow courtroom was designated as a location for people to watch the proceeding on video in the event there are more people that can fit in the courtroom. So that is just the footage that we have. We do also continuing to follow this live picture that we have over in that area where our partners at Fox 5 in New York, they are continuing their coverage. But while we wait for their live programming to continue here at Live Now from Fox, let's get a full recap on what they had to say just before Mangione was.
That's a great question, Jenny. In the summer day, initially they were reporting he was going to be taken to Rikers, but now that he's going to be indicted in federal court, he may go to the same lockup where Diddy is.
Airlifted there to a jail in New York. Let's head to this coverage from Fox 5, New York.
Love Fox 5 New York.
Mangione expected to land on Long Island any minute. Our team coverage on today's big story continues with Fox 5's Jessica Formoso. She is live at MacArthur Airport in Ronkonkoma. So, Jessica, what are you hearing at the moment?
Bianca, we're here at MacArthur Airport, and a source telling us that Luigi Mangione will be flying into this airport. So I'm going to step out of the way because we just arrived on scene, and we can see the NYPD chopper as you're looking at it live right now. This means that he has.
If I'd have known, I would have went over there and stood by the fence with her and got some footage for you guys. But I had no, I figured for sure they'd be flying him into somewhere closer to the city.
Not arrived yet, and if he has, he's probably still inside, has not made his way out here. As soon as his plane lands, which departed from Altoona around 10:49-ish, it should be arriving, and now I'm being told, sorry, there's other media here on the scene, and they're pointing to us to head over there. But again, you can see here the live photo of the NYPD chopper. Like I was saying, the plane left Altoona around 10:49, should be arriving here at MacArthur Airport at any minute now. Once he lands, they will be putting him on that chopper, and that's when he will be heading to Manhattan to federal court, where he will face charges. Of course, we will be staying out here, hoping to get a glimpse of Luigi Mangione. As our Michelle Ross has reported, the reason why they decided to fly instead of driving the 5 hours all the way here is because it was less risky. Meaning, you know, we know that he has supporters. People could be
Oh, please. They would have been, the paparazzi would have been chasing them. They could have had another like Princess Di situation. Like it would be ridiculous for them not to just get in a helicopter and fly here. Could you imagine a 5-hour like motorcade bringing him to New York? That would just be ridiculous.
On the streets with signs and everything. So this source is telling us is just a safer way, a quicker way for him to get to New York City. And again, from Long Island, he will get on that chopper, that NYPD chopper that's behind me, and will fly over to the city. We will stay on this, and we'll bring you the very latest as soon as we get it. That's all I have for now in Ronkonkoma. I'm Jessica Formoso, Fox 5 News. Bianca, I send it back to you inside.
Yeah, Jessica, as we're getting some information about that plane that he's taking, which we're finding out it's a Cessna Caravan single turbo prop plane. So obviously keeping an eye out for that. And we have the team coverage going on as we await for him to land, get to Manhattan, and appear before a judge. Meanwhile, after Mangione lands.
Okay. And here's the scene right now outside federal court, I guess. From like the alleyway, from the alley. So they have cameras out there too. First thing, let's take a look at the piece that Mark Bederow had published in the New York Times this morning. VK, sir, are you the viewer who actually works at United Healthcare? Because I think I've seen some comments before. Thanks for the 5. Says they still don't understand this boy's family more wealthy than my boss, Brian. Right. So your boss was Brian Thompson, right? You work for United Healthcare. That's correct. And didn't even have our insurance coverage. What the duck? Yeah, this was like, we're going to see from what they are now releasing from his manifesto and the other notes that they found on him, what his motivations may be. That's why Alvin Bragg, in his infinite wisdom, decided to upgrade this to some terrorism charges. And Mark Bederow and I had been discussing this, and then coincidentally, his piece was published in the Times. So let's take a look at that, because he can't join us until about 2:45 when he gets off his client call. So let's take a look. This is Mark Bederow's piece from this morning. It's a mistake to charge Luigi Mangione with terrorism. It's in this morning's New York Times by Mark Bederow. Mr. Bederow is a criminal defense lawyer and former Manhattan assistant district attorney. And it begins, the murder of healthcare executive Brian Thompson on a Midtown sidewalk was shocking, brazen, and seemingly methodical, but it wasn't all that sophisticated. Oh, this is another, I'm just breaking from this for a second. It's like another Bederow letter that's going to go down in history. A luckier way to have him always joining us. Woot, woot. Okay. It didn't take long for the authorities to identify Luigi Mangione as the likely murderer and arrest him. They had surveillance videos and various sightings. They are said to have forensic evidence linking him to the crime. A gun he had when he was arrested in Pennsylvania is said to be the same type of gun as the murder weapon. A notebook attributed to Mr. Mangione is said to have mentioned Mr. Thompson's company, United Healthcare, and that he planned to shoot a CEO. These parasites had it coming, he wrote, condemning healthcare companies for callous greed. In other words, Manhattan prosecutors have what looks to be a pretty straightforward case of second-degree murder, the charge that is almost always filed in New York State in cases of intentional murder. But the Manhasset District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, instead has charged Mr. Mangione with first-degree and second-degree murder in furtherance of terrorism, among other charges, which requires lifetime imprisonment in the event of a conviction. The maximum sentence for second-degree murder without the terrorism charge would be 25 years to life. By complicating a simple case, Mr. Bragg has increased the risk of acquittal on the most serious charge and a hung jury on any charge. Since Mr. Mangione is already being celebrated by some as a folk hero because of his rage against the American healthcare system, the terrorism charge, which alleges that Mr. Mangione, quote, intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policies of a unit of government, and affect the conduct of a unit of government, almost certainly will turn the case into political theater. By charging Mr. Mangione as a terrorist, prosecutors are taking on a higher burden to support a dubious theory. In trying to prove that Mr. Mangione killed Mr. Thompson to, quote, intimidate or coerce a civilian population, end quote, prosecutors will presumably argue that the civilian population comprises healthcare executives and employees. But New York appellate courts have taken a very limited and fairly traditional view of what constitutes a civilian community under the terrorism law that was enacted within days of the September 11th attacks. The evidence appears to suggest that Mr. Mangione was bent on assassinating Mr. Thompson rather than intending, quote, to sow terror, end quote, as Mr. Bragg alleged in his news conference unsealing Mr. Mangione's indictment. Mr. Mangione's notebook reportedly says that he planned a targeted assassination because he did not want to, quote, risk innocence, end quote. And that's innocent with a TS at the end, not a CE, in case you're listening and not reading along. So while this statement incriminates Mr. Mangione as a murderer, it appears to undermine the terrorism charge. By taking on the burden of trying to prove Mr. Mangione's essentially political intent, prosecutors could amplify the criticisms of the American healthcare system that have made Mr. Mangione so alarmingly popular. The district attorney would provide Mr. Mangione a soapbox upon which he will be allowed to rail against the American healthcare system while trying to garner sympathy. Given the national debate over the role of insurance companies like Mr. Thompson's, prosecutors will have a hard time, in any case, weeding out jurors who have some sympathy for the defendant. By turning Mr. Mangione's supposed intent into a central element of the trial, they invite juror nullification, in which jurors ignore their instructions to focus on the facts and instead let their points of view influence their verdict, leading to a hung jury, if not a full acquittal. At a standard second-degree murder trial, the jury would be instructed that the prosecution need only prove that Mr. Mangione committed the crime. Motive does not need to be considered. Perhaps Mr. Mangione's most feasible defense would be a psychiatric one, alleging that he is not criminally responsible by reason of mental disease or defect. Unless there is persuasive evidence that is yet to be revealed, such a defense would be fairly easily undermined by evidence of Mr. Mangione's detailed planning, concealment, and flight. But the terrorism charge could slightly enhance such a defense if a jury is subjected to Mr. Mangione testifying about his grievances against the healthcare system and how it led a seemingly intelligent and grounded young man to assassinate an individual he didn't know simply because he was a top executive at the nation's largest insurance company. And if the threat of life without parole is simply being used as a cudgel to leverage a plea to second-degree murder, how would Mr. Bragg justify wiping away the terrorism charge? Brings to mind the Daniel Penny case, in which Mr. Bragg brought a manslaughter charge, then dismissed it when jurors deadlocked, leading to an outright acquittal on even the lesser charge. We talked about this. I'm breaking from this for a second. We talked about this during the Daniel Penny trial. We talked about this with Josh Ritter, and we said At the time, we hypothesized this is going to cause Alvin Bragg to now overcharge because he knows that he can just dismiss the top charge when he feels like it's not going well for him. And that's exactly what he did. And we were kind of shocked when the judge allowed it and then allowed them to go on to the second charge in Daniel Penny. And then they got an outright acquittal. So didn't really work out the way Alvin Bragg thought it would. Back to the piece. The bottom line is that by choosing to make an open and shut murder case into a complicated debate on the healthcare industry, the district attorney risks highlighting the most troubling aspects of the case and making a conviction more difficult. That, my friends, is Mark Bederow's opinion piece from today's New York Times. Fame walks among us. Thanks, Jenny, for being a member for 4 months. Dragonfly, thanks for being a member for months. I enjoy seeing you and Mark breaking everything down for us. Love you both. Love you too. Love you too. Nick, TTT, thanks for the 5. Amazing how media unites to protect their own, all while they divide and conquer us over the insignificant social issues while the theft continues. Thank you for your opinion. On top, thank you for being on top of the super sticker. Love Daddy Bederow. Interesting. Also, it's been announced that, as you know, or may not know, Luigi Mangione is from a very wealthy family. Apparently, they're worth something like $100 million. There seems to be a clause in his grandmother's will that he was maybe set to inherit at some point $30 million. But she has a clause in her will that if anybody's indicted for a felony or charged with a crime, that they're not going to be allowed to inherit, which is interesting considering these circumstances. Did she have an inkling that one of her grandchildren might go rogue at some point? I don't know. I don't know how many of you also saw that Saturday Night Live covered this on Saturday night. They did their cold open was Sarah Sherman playing Nancy Grace, talking about Luigi Mangione. I can't play it because they'll strike me, but look it up later because it's interesting. I didn't think her impression of Nancy Grace was that great, but funny just the same. I mean, funny that they would cover it and funny that people thought it was in poor taste. And there's a lot of things. We've been thinking a long time that Saturday Night Live is missing out by not covering stuff from the Karen Reed case, but they haven't covered it. Charity says grandma left $30 million between her 10 grandchildren and 37 grandchildren. 10 children and 37 grand. Oh, so it was $30 million between all the people? Okay. I wonder if she knew. Yeah. Yes, Dakota. I wonder if she had an inkling that somebody 37 grandchildren. That's a lot. That is a lot. But Spinks Satani, Phil says, reading the comments on Mark's piece, someone said he makes way too much sense. So the family of Luigi, I'm imagining, are paying for his private defense attorney, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, who happens to be married to the defense attorney for P. Diddy, which I thought was interesting, which I also thought was interesting is that she already has commented on this case. I thought I had that piece pulled up for you. Let me just see. She's already commented on this case. Yeah, I do. I have the audio. I have the video. She commented on this case before she was hired, which is interesting. It's kind of like maybe wait and see if the phone rings, because now you're kind of locked into something. Let me show you that video before we move on to the as such federal complaint. Let me move this over here. There are mixed opinions about Karen Agnifilo. I don't have any because I don't know her personally. So let's play this piece in which she commented on Luigi's case prior to her being hired in this case.
Accused murderer Luigi Mangione has a new lawyer. High-powered defense attorney Karen Friedman Agnifilo, who worked as the chief assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office for more than 7 years.
The evidence is going to be so overwhelming that he did what he did.
Agnifilo declined NBC News' interview.
Yeah, she declined the interview now, but that was the interview she gave before she was hired. So listen to that again. Well, yeah, it's obvious he did it.
Attorney in the Manhattan DA's office for more than 7 years.
The evidence is going to be so overwhelming that he did what he did.
Agnifilo declined NBC News'
Oops.
interview request, but appeared on CNN earlier this week before becoming Mangione's attorney, laying out her thoughts about a defense strategy.
He was brilliant his whole life. He comes from this great family. I mean, something changed, right? Significantly, something changed. And they're going to, I think, potentially have a not guilty by reason of insanity potential defense.
How rare is it now for someone to try to mount an insanity defense?
It's a huge risk.
She's kind of locked into that now because she was already opined on that, right?
Because the defendant has to admit that he is the one who committed the crime.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos is a practicing criminal defense attorney in New York.
Sometimes the only option for a defense attorney is put the government to its burden, make them prove their case, and hope they make a mistake.
When Mangione will be moved to New York to face charges there remains unclear.
Well, he's already been moved, so this is old news by now, but I just thought it would be interesting to show you what she already said before she was hired. You have to be so careful when you're a talking head that is still practicing, because when you get that phone call, now you're kind of locked into what you've already said, and that can kind of work not so much in your client's favor. Luigi's mother's comments, we can get to that later. I want to read the complaint. I also thought it was curious that his mother had reported him missing all the way back in November in San Francisco, but she hadn't heard from him since like July 1st. 26-year-old son she hasn't heard from in over 4 months, and then she reported him. If I don't hear from my kids for one day, I mean, I've got everybody on like the, Find My Friend or whatever. I know where all my kids are at all time and times, and they don't all live with me. They're adults. They live on their own, but I'm always checking their location. Like, that's just wild to me. And she did say something like, well, I could see him doing this, but I think the FBI came to her. I think it's a little bit unclear. I don't think she's the one who called the FBI and said, oh yeah, that picture looks like my son. I think they kind of knew who it was or had ideas who it was, and they reached out to her. So kind of interesting, right? He withdrew from all his friends and family. Yeah, I don't know what he was going through. And right, maybe Karen's interview was the reason he was hired. Exactly. I asked Mark about that too. I said, oh, I wonder if that's how they found her. Interesting. Right. Strange for an Italian mother. That's what I was thinking too. Although her first name's Kathleen, which makes me think she may be Irish, but still, even an Irish mother. All right, let's take a look at the complaint. And this is the new federal complaint that was just unsealed moments ago, like moments ago. In the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. Gonna let me highlight on this one. Yay. Sometimes I'll let you highlight, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. And this is the United States of America. This is in the Southern District of New York. It's the United States of America versus Luigi Nicholas Mangione. Try and save your questions because I can't read the chat when I'm reading too. I'll use this is a field complaint. Southern District of New York. Gary W. Cobb, being duly sworn, deposes and says that he is a special agent with the FBI and charges as follows. Count 1, stalking, travel in interstate commerce. 1, from at least in or about November 24th, 2024 to on or about December 4th, 2024 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant, traveled in interstate commerce with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate, and place under surveillance with the intent to kill, injure, harass, and intimidate another person. And in the course of and as a result of such travel, engaged in conduct that placed that person in reasonable fear of the death of and serious bodily injury to that person, and in the course of engaging in such conduct, caused the death of that person, to wit, Mangione traveled from Georgia to New York, for the purpose of stalking and killing Brian Thompson. And while in New York, Mangione stalked and then shot and killed Thompson in the vicinity of West 54th Street and 6th Avenue, outside the Midtown Hilton Hotel. Doesn't say that there, but we know that. Count 2. Stalking, use of interstate facilities. From at least on or about November 24th, 2024 to in or about December 4th, 2024 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant, with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate, and place under surveillance with intent to kill, injure, harass, and intimidate another person, used an electronic communication service and electronic communication system of interstate commerce and a facility of interstate or foreign commerce to engage in a course of conduct that placed that person in reasonable fear of the death of and serious bodily injury to that person, and in the course of engaging in such conduct, caused the death of that person. To wit, Mangione used a cell phone, interstate wires, interstate highways, and the internet to plan and carry out the stalking, shooting, and killing of Brian Thompson in the vicinity of West 54th Street and 6th Avenue in Manhattan. And here are the U.S. Code violations. Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 2261A2A and 2261B1. Count 3, murder through use of a firearm. 3, on or about December 4th, 2024, in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant, during and in relation to crimes of violence for which he may be prosecuted in a court of the United States, namely, the stalking offenses charged in counts 1 and 2 of this complaint, knowingly used and carried a firearm, and in furtherance of such crimes, possessed a firearm, and in the course of that crime, caused the death of a person through the use of a firearm, which killing is murder as defined in Title 18, U.S. Code Section 1111A. To wit, Mangione shot and killed Brian Thompson in the vicinity of West 54th Street and 6th Avenue in Manhattan. That's the violation of Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 924J. Count 4, firearms offense. 4, on or about December 4th, 2024, in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant, during and in relation to crimes of violence for which he may be prosecuted in a court of the United States, namely the stalking offenses charged in counts 1 and 2 of this complaint, knowingly used and carried a firearm, and in furtherance of such crimes, possessed a firearm which was brandished and discharged and which was equipped with a firearm silencer and a firearm muffler. That's a violation of Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 924, C1A1, 2, 3, and C1B2. The murder of Brian Thompson. The bases for my knowledge in the foregoing charges are in part as follows. 5, I'm a special agent with the FBI, and I'm assigned to the FBI's Violent Crimes Task Force. I've been personally involved in the investigation of this matter. This affidavit is based upon my conversations with other law enforcement officers, my examination of documents obtained through a court-authorized search warrant, my review of documents prepared by others, security camera video, and my involvement in this investigation. Because this affidavit is being submitted for the limited purpose of establishing probable cause, it does not include all of the facts that I have learned during the course of my investigation. Where the contents of documents and the actions, statements, and conversations of others are reported herein, they are reported in substance and in part, except where otherwise indicated. 6, based on my participation in this investigation, my conversations with other law enforcement officers, my review of documents prepared by others, and my review of security cam video, I have learned, among other things, the following. Hold on one second. I just have to clear my throat. Give me 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves for a second. Okay, we'll see if that's any better. A. On December 4th, 2024, at approximately 6:45 a.m., Brian Thompson, the victim, the chief executive officer of a nationwide health insurance company, Company One, was shot and killed by a masked assailant, the shooter, while walking on West 54th Street toward a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, the Midtown Hotel, where a Company One investor conference was scheduled to begin at 8 a.m. As discussed below, the shooter was later identified to be Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant. Security camera video showed the shooter, who was wearing a gray backpack, the gray backpack, come from between two parked cars, walk up behind the victim, and shoot the victim in the leg and back outside of the Midtown Hotel's entrance on West 54th Street. That's the Midtown Hilton. I don't know why they're not naming it, but we know that. The firearm the shooter used appeared to have a sound suppressing device or silencer attached to the front of its barrel. A still image from the security camera video of the shooting is provided below. Mark, just give me a thumbs up whenever you're ready. I'm just reading. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the one, the only guy that I know who's ever had an opinion piece published in the New York Times, attorney Mark Bederow.
How are you? How's it
Great.
going?
How are you?
Okay.
Is your phone ringing off the hook today?
It's been an interesting day. You know, I did a little Fox News bit earlier this week for airing today, and
I saw. I mean, I don't know if it's on YouTube yet. We can watch it if it is, but
I don't know if it is or it isn't yet. But you know, the Times thing was interesting. Did you already talk about the Times thing?
well, we read it. We
Oh.
read it together, and then we're going to have questions for you because I wanted to read that first because that was state charges. Now I'm just reading the federal complaint. Then we're going to come back to you for comments, thoughts, concerns. And
Well, I don't know how far you're through the federal complaint, but I'm sure you'll see it's a much cleaner, simpler, streamlined case that makes the Manhattan DA case look just bloated and unnecessary. But
we didn't get that far. We're just up to like page 3 of 10. So here's the photos of him outside the hotel shooting.
that's a block from my office, by the way.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. And it was the day of the tree lighting, and Rockefeller Center's around the corner. And also there was a major thing going on in Columbus Circle. Bill Clinton was in town, and a bunch of other, there was a lot of Secret Service around. So it's very strange that it had happened on this particular day, in my opinion.
I mean, I haven't seen what you're doing so far. Maybe it'll come later, but have you addressed this topic about people throwing adulation and flowers at this guy for shooting a guy in the back?
Not yet. We'll get to that after. I was waiting for you because people are getting tattoos of this guy, like tattoos of him, like his face tattooed on their bicep.
Disgusting, but I guess we'll save that for later.
Yeah, let's just move on. So this B, law enforcement personnel who responded to the scene of the shooting recovered, among other items, spent 9mm shell casings and at least one round of live 9mm ammunition. The words deny, delay, and depose were written on the side of some of the shell casings. Responding law enforcement personnel also recovered a cell phone in the vicinity of the location where the shooting had occurred. The investigation. 7, based on my participation in this investigation, my conversations with other law enforcement officers, my examination of documents obtained through a court-authorized search warrant, my review of documents prepared by others, and my review of security camera video, I know that over the course of the next several days, investigators retrieved and reviewed hundreds of hours of recordings from nearby security cameras to track the shooter's movements both before and after the murder. From that review, investigators were able to formulate the following timeline of the shooter's movements from November 24, 2024, up to and including December 4th of 2024.
10 days. That's pretty chilling, huh?
10 days he was stalking him. November 24th of 2024. On November 24th, 2024, at approximately 10:11 p.m., the shooter arrived in New York City on an intercity bus at the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan. The bus originated in Atlanta, Georgia. The shooter took a taxi to the area around the Midtown Hotel and stayed in the area for approximately 1 hour before taking another taxi to a hostel located in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. The hostel. The shooter registered at the hostel under the name Mark Rosario and provided a false New Jersey driver's license as a form of ID. The fake New Jersey ID. Photograph of the false New Jersey ID is provided below. Maplewood, New Jersey. When the shooter was checking in at the hostel, the desk clerk asked the shooter to remove his mask, which he did, revealing his face to a security camera as shown below. Those were the Crime Stoppers photos that were all over the place. Other than this interaction with the desk clerk.
Those are the similar to the photos that the Coffin Daffer posted, the AI female photos came from that. Mm.
Right, where somebody, you know, just interposed somebody's face on top of it and, you know. Other than this interaction with the desk clerk, the shooter consistently kept his mask on throughout his time in New York, including while inside the hostel. Here's the thing, too, like the whole mask thing, like at some point, are people going to think people are suspicious when they're wearing masks, or are we just done with that? Is this just going to be like a totally accepted thing? Because there are some stores that won't allow you in with a mask anymore. Like try to walk into Tiffany's with a mask on. They're like, no.
There's plenty of people still on the subway walking around Manhattan in COVID type masks. Right. I mean, it's not like prevalent, but it's something a few years ago you'd never see that now you just kind of roll your eyes. A lot of people do it.
Exactly. December 4th, 2024. D, on December 4th, 2024, at approximately 5:35 a.m., the shooter left the hostel wearing the gray backpack and rode an electric bicycle down Central Park West to a location near the Midtown Hotel, as shown below. There he is. I mean, this is how an investigation should be, right? Maybe MSP can take note here. E, at approximately 5:41 a.m., the shooter walked around the area of the Midtown Hotel and at one point purchased items from a nearby coffee shop, which we now know as Starbucks. The shooter then returned to a bench in the vicinity of the Midtown Hotel. On at least one occasion prior to the murder, the shooter was depicted using a cell phone. F, at approximately 6:45 a.m., after waiting near the Midtown Hotel for approximately an hour, the shooter saw and approached the victim, shot the victim multiple times, and then fled on foot to West 55th Street, where the shooter mounted the electric bicycle and rode towards Central Park. After disappearing inside the park for a period of time, the shooter was captured on video again, exiting the park near West 77th Street and Central Park West, riding north on Central Park West. When he emerged from the park, the shooter was no longer carrying the gray backpack, as shown below. I'm just finding out for the first time that there are no cameras in Central Park. Did you know that?
I'm not. That can't be the case.
That's what they were saying. That's why there's no footage of him inside the park.
I mean, obviously there's spaces in Central Park where logistically, the Great Lawn and the Sheep Meadow are in the middle open spaces, or where there's trees, the Ramble, all of that. It's hard to imagine that there wouldn't be cameras, but on those traverse roads, on 79th, 72nd, 86th Street, there's got to be cameras.
I don't know. I heard it somewhere, and there's no footage of him like riding his bike through the park. So I don't know if that's true or not. I was
in those dead zones, is what I'm saying. Like where there's just no cross. I mean, anytime where there's crosstown traffic, there's got to be cameras, I would think.
Or like the bike paths and the jogging paths. Like you would think that they were there, but I can't remember who reported that, but I'll find it.
Yeah, that's hard to believe.
Well, here, I guess this is him going into the park.
That appears to be
like Central Park South.
That looks like Central Park West, I think. I mean, that's obviously 55th and probably 6th or 7th Avenue.
He exited at West 77th and Central Park West, but he entered on Central Park South. All right. In any event.
Yeah.
At approximately 6:58 a.m., security camera footage captured the shooter riding the electric bike near West 85th and Columbus.
God, my old haunting area. This is crazy. It's all the areas I used to live and work.
All the places.
Yeah.
2 minutes later, at approximately 7 a.m., the shooter was captured on video walking near West 86th Street and Columbus without the electric bicycle. At approximately 7:04 a.m., the shooter entered a taxi that drove him to the George Washington Bridge bus terminal in the vicinity of West 179th Street and Fort Washington Avenue in Upper Manhattan. The shooter's face was captured by a camera in the taxi, as shown below. At approximately 7:30 a.m., video footage from the George Washington Bridge bus terminal captured the shooter entering the facility. No video footage showed the shooter leaving the bus terminal, suggesting that the shooter left New York City. I thought originally they said he went into Port Authority bus terminal.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting that he would go to GWB. It's much smaller. It's much more off the beaten path. I mean, it would suggest some thought to try to at least make it less likely that he would be seen. I mean, Port Authority, for those that are not in New York, it's 42nd and 8th Avenue. That's the middle of Times Square. Place it's a bus station. In America, it's a zoo.
Yeah, even at that time in the morning.
Oh, that's like commuter. Absolutely. That place would be packed.
On or about December 6, 2024, law enforcement officers searching the Central Park found a gray backpack, matching the appearance of the gray backpack worn by the shooter as depicted below. The arrest and identification of the shooter. 8. Based on my participation in this investigation, my conversations with other law enforcement officers, my examination of documents and items obtained through a court-authorized search warrant, my review of documents prepared by others, and my review of security camera video, I know, among other things. A. On December 9th, 2024, at approximately 9:14 a.m., a worker at a fast food restaurant, which we know now as McDonald's, in Altoona, Pennsylvania, called the police about a male customer later identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant, who the worker believed resembled photos of the shooter that had been broadcast in the media following the victim's murder. That's just wild to me. He had a mask on that they even recognized him. B. Members of the Altoona Police Department responded and encountered Mangione, who they also believed matched the appearance of the shooter. When approached by responding officers and asked for identification, Mangione offered the false New Jersey ID used by the shooter to check into the hostel. Mangione was later found to be in possession of the loaded 9mm pistol and silencer consistent with the weapon used to kill the victim. Clothing that matched apparel that the shooter wore in the security camera videos, a notebook, several $1,000s in cash, an envelope associated with an FDIC-insured bank, and a letter addressed, quote, to the feds. The feds letter. He had a letter addressed to the feds. Okay. Not the smartest, not the smartest guy on the planet.
I mean, something's clearly wrong with him. It doesn't rise. We'll talk about this later.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't rise to the legal definition of insanity, which is virtually 99% of the time impossible to meet. But this guy is clearly, a nut job for sure.
Planned it. Premeditation.
His concealing. I mean, he's not going to get off on a psych defense. His best defense is going to be nullification with some of these wackos who think he's a hero. But I don't mean to jump ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The 9mm pistol and silencer were later tested and found to be operable by a ballistics examiner from the New York City Police Department. Photographs of the firearm and the silencer recovered from Mangione are depicted below. I mean, are they saying he made this thing on a 3D printer? Like, can you really make a gun on a 3D printer?
You can. I had a guy who was prosecuted years ago who made a prop gun for a Broadway show. Literally, he was in the news back then. He made a prop gun, and the New York City Police Department and the Manhattan DA arrested him, threatened to indict him, and the case ultimately had to be dismissed because he didn't commit a crime. It wasn't even, operable. But yeah, you can literally make this kind of stuff on a 3D printer.
That's insane. C. The notebook contains several handwritten pages that express hostility toward the health insurance industry and wealthy executives in particular. For example, the notebook contained the following statements and entries that appear to correspond to particular dates. 1. In an entry marked as 8/15, August 15 of 2024, the notebook described how the details are finally coming together. Oh, it's the manifesto.
Yeah.
And I'm glad in a way that I procrastinated because it allowed me to learn more about acronym for Company One. It's probably UHC.
Yeah.
Notebook entry also stated that, quote, the target is insurance because it checks every box. 2, in an entry marked as 10/22, October 22, 2024, the notebook stated 1.5 months. The investor conference is a true windfall. And most importantly, the message becomes self-evident. Later on in the entry, the notebook describes an intent to whack the CEO. He didn't even spell whack right. W-A-C-K. To whack the CEO of one of the insurance companies at its investor conference, as described above, October 22nd, 2024, was approximately 6 weeks before the date of the murder of the victim, which occurred on the date of Company One's investor conference. D, the Fed's letter recovered from Mangione stated, I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. Based on my own research, I believe that CAD refers to computer-aided design. The Fed's letter also stated, P.S., you can check the serial numbers. You can check serial numbers to verify this is all self-funded. My own ATM withdrawals. Oh, he thought of everything, didn't he? 9, based on all the above, my review of photographs of the shooter and my review of the arrest photographs of Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant, I respectfully submit that Mangione is the shooter who shot and killed the victim on December 4th, 2024. Additionally, the notebook entries, the Fed's letter, the shooter's apparent surveillance of the Midtown Hotel on November 24th, 2024, and December 4th, 2024, and the shooter's use of counter surveillance techniques and escape from New York City all suggest that the shooter undertook extensive efforts to identify the victim, place the victim under surveillance, and track the victim's whereabouts in the time period leading up to the murder. Below are surveillance stills of the shooter and arrest photograph of Mangione. Wherefore, I respectfully request that a warrant be issued for the arrest of Luigi Mangione, the defendant, and that he be imprisoned or bailed, as the case may be. XOXO, Gary W. Cobb, Special Agent, FBI, dated, oh, this is dated, today's the 19th. This was dated yesterday. That's interesting because we didn't know these charges were coming until today, right?
Well, this is very interesting because, excuse me, it's a federal complaint, not an indictment. They knew that he was going to be extradited to New York on a state indictment for murder. And there's haste in this. I mean, a federal complaint is just an FBI agent doing what you see here, as opposed to a grand jury takes a little more time, as well as perhaps direct access to the evidence. And they wanted to get this in. And they ended up doing this on the same day that he came back to New York. And let's be honest, they kind of upstaged the DA. This feels like a game of tug of war, and the feds are going to, assert their dominance. They have a much cleaner case. It's just straightforward. I mean, you get past the wonky federal statutes. It's just a guy who crossed state lines, surveilled him, stalked him, and then shot him with a gun, and that makes him eligible for the death penalty. They're never going to seek to execute him. They may threaten to do that to coerce a plea, and at which point the state case will have to be dumped on New York State double jeopardy grounds. This seems like a very dominant, aggressive move by the U.S. attorney to yank this away from the Manhattan DA. They'll never say that publicly, neither one of them, but they really seem to have pantsed the DA today on all of it.
But we can say it. I mean, I'm surprised that it happened so quickly. Are you surprised that it happened so quickly? Only
to me it suggests that they want to grab this now and make it clear we're running point on this. We're going to keep him, in a federal court. We're not going to deal with any of this terrorism nonsense, which I assume we'll talk about, what you went over in the op-ed. And we're just going to keep this real simple. We have a death penalty eligible case. He's screwed. In federal court, we're not going to get into the shenanigans of him ranting and raving about his politics. It's a hostile forum for him. No, I think the haste tells you that they're trying to pull this away quickly from the state.
Well, you put it in your opinion piece, which you and I had discussed prior to, I mean, I don't know how long you've been writing that for, but we discussed this during Daniel Penny, that what happened in Daniel Penny by the judge allowing the DA to just, withdraw the top charge, it's going to cause Bragg to continue to overcharge in the future.
Not only that, and some of these editorials, as you know, stuff gets omitted, word space, and you could write an essay that goes on for like 10 pages. But the terrorism charge is, I mean, I don't want to say silly, that's not fair, but it's misguided, it's unnecessary. But if they want to use that as a method to force a plea, because the terrorism is life without parole, that's mandatory, that's the best leverage they have. Of course, the feds have the death penalty, which is, here and here, but they want to force him to plead guilty to, straightforward murder, to 25 to life on a murder 2 conviction. In light of Daniel Penny, how, as the Manhattan DA, do you justify that? If you went so far to dip your toe in the pool and say, we're going to treat this guy as a terrorist, how do you so cavalierly or casually withdraw that just to get a murder 2 conviction, which in New York State, that's what this is.
I know.
It's a straightforward murder 2 case. So this does feel like, Penny redux a little bit with their bizarre overcharging. And, one has to wonder if that also influenced the feds to say, we're not dealing with this. We're not going to give this guy a soapbox to turn this into a referendum on whether you think it's okay to kill a guy for the sin of being a CEO of a company we don't like. Guy was a father. He had young kids. You hate the company. God bless you. It's a free country, but your freedom of speech doesn't give you a right to shoot a man in the back, blood, because you feel like it's the right thing to do. And I'm sure the feds are looking at all these idiots who are standing outside, protesting outside the court in Pennsylvania, calling this guy a hero. That crap is not going to go on in federal court. And this is, I think, the way of them saying, we are going to do this the right way, and this guy is cooked, and we're just not going to play with the noise, the nonsense, and the loony factor, which ironically the Manhattan DA has invited. They have chosen to make their case a lunatic trial. I mean, they have literally invited the central issue at any state court prosecution to be the idea of what his motive was, which of course is just a green light for him if he chooses to rant and rave about his grievances and why he did it. And it's mind-boggling that the Manhattan DA would do this. It's stunning.
And don't you think that that's what he wants? Like he clearly is looking for his 15 minutes. He's clearly wanting to tell his story. He definitely wants to try this case. He's never going to take a plea. Why would he take a plea?
Well, that's another interesting issue, but certainly it's what his lawyer is going to want, because, I mean, the only arguable defense here, if you put nullification aside, although that's really the defense that any defense attorney would be trying to use based upon, if you get one of these wackadoos on the jury, maybe that works. But the only colorable defense with a straight face that any lawyer would make is insanity. It's not a very good one, but it does invite you to put this out there and kind of wrap around the nullification defense around a real defense, because in an insanity defense, you could have a doctor testify to all these rantings and ravings that he was told, but, the hearsay is admissible, that the client told him that made him believe that he's suffering from some mental disease or defect, and allow that. But I mean, why would a prosecutor invite this and give any chance, however small it may be, to giving him a better chance of winning when this is such an open and shut murder case, other than the nullification issues?
Right.
And you don't, the jury, I know you went over the letter, so if I'm repeating it.
No, I want you to explain that a little bit more for people who might not understand. So in murder 2 is what murder 1 is in most other states. In New York, we have a different, murder 1 is special circumstances. It's a judge, law enforcement, if you kill one of those kind of people, or others.
Yeah. So
explain the difference for people who don't know about New York law. Oh, did I just lose you? You froze. Am I frozen?
Okay, I'm back. Hello. Got me?
I guess. Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So most regular murder, if that's the right term in New York, is murder two. And that's just if you walk up to someone and shoot them on purpose and say, I did it, and I enjoyed it. Believe it or not, that's second degree murder.
Mhm.
In New York, murder in the first degree has to be, the murder of a police officer acting in the course of his duties. Cops get a special attention for risking their lives. It's been extended to include other first responders, firemen, or firepersons, firefighters, EMTs, people, those kinds of people all generally get protected. If you murder a witness, that's considered so heinous that can level it up to murder in the first degree. If if it's a contract killing, that can also be first degree murder. That's just considered so hideous. If you murder more than one person,
Right. That's why Long Island serial killer is charged with murder one, because he's a serial killer.
Yeah. If you commit an intentional killing, that would otherwise be murder in the second degree, but it's during the course of committing another intentional violent felony. So in other words, if you rob someone and during the course of the robbery, then you shoot him in the back of the head, that would be first degree murder in that situation. And then, of course, there's a few others. And then one of them is this, terrorism enhancement, which I have to tell you, it feels more like a stunt by the Manhattan DA than anything else, to literally take on the burden of calling this guy a terrorist. But in a traditional murder in the second degree case, like most other crimes, you have to prove the defendant's intent, which would be the intent to kill. But you don't have to establish a motive, although any prosecutor wants to, it helps. You don't literally need to prove why it happened, that it did happen with the intent.
And then he did it.
Right. So the jury would actually be instructed in a second degree murder case that motive is not an element. You do not have to find that, why it happened, although you may consider if there's evidence of a motive as being relevant to the defendant's intent. But by charging him as a terrorist and saying his intent was to influence and terrorize a segment of the civilian population, you are 1,000% putting the defendant's intent squarely in issue and inviting the defendant to say, you want to talk about this? Let's do it. I mean,
opening the door for all of this.
It feels like an own goal.
Soapboxing.
It makes no sense. And you have to wonder if that maybe influenced the Southern District of New York to say enough of this
quickly.
Let's just get, at least attempt to get a guilty plea quickly. Also, you have to understand the state's at a huge disadvantage, not only with the leverage that the feds will have and the aura and power of the feds. The DA is at another disadvantage. Speedy trial on a murder case in Manhattan Supreme Court and a speedy trial in the Southern District of New York are two totally different things, okay? The speedy trial statute in New York State does not apply in a murder case. So in essence, the DA, if they wanted to, they can drag their heels. They can take months to disclose things. There's not much a judge can do. In federal court, they're going to go in and say, here's the deal. Motions are going to be by this day. We'll have a conference, and then we're going to put it down for trial with this. And in federal court, the expectation is when it's go time, unless there's a real good reason for there not to be. Now, a psych defense slows it down considerably. That's true, but that's going to be in both courts. Obviously, the defense in one jurisdiction will be the same in the other. If he's legally insane in state court, it has to be the same in federal court. But it's only a matter of time, I think, before the feds just completely elbow the state out of this completely, and it's a federal case.
And do you think that that's the right move?
I don't know. I think certainly the charges in Manhattan Supreme Court seem just I don't get it at all. I just why do it? I mean, if the idea is to punish the defendant in the strongest way possible for his conduct with lessening the risk a circus, which would come here, lessening the risk of, you know, problems with jurors and whatnot. You know, don't forget, in the Southern District of New York, the jury pool is Manhattan and also Westchester. Westchester County, for those who are not in New York, is a hell of a lot different than Manhattan. It's, you know, Westchester is very affluent, you know, it's
And
very
conservative. I mean, you can say it.
to the extent you have any conservatives in the metro New York area, Westchester is going to have a lot more than Manhattan. So their jury pool is going to be, you know, much stronger. You have a much stronger penalty. You have a much less likelihood of hung jury or an acquittal. So if the goal of the exercise here is to make sure that this guy is caged for the rest of his natural life, then it's a no-brainer that this is a federal case. I mean, and this is not one of those kind of, you know, how do we make federal jurisdiction like some people feel like they did in the Birchmore case, for example, that it's kind of, you know, we had no choice. They kind of forced our hand because the Norfolk DA is incapable of tying their own shoes, basically, when it comes to these kind of investigations. I mean, that's not really the case here. But in this case, the federal jurisdiction is easy. I mean, this guy traveled from out of state with the specific purpose of committing a murder in a different jurisdiction. You know, he clearly went across state lines for the purpose of committing a murder, and he did it over the course of 10 days. He appeared to at least have planned it as far back as 3 or 4 months in advance. I mean, this is a ground ball federal case.
Right. So will he be arraigned in federal court today and in state court? Here's the shot outside.
He should be.
Court.
I mean, listen, they have 2 charging instruments in both jurisdictions. So, you know, good for Luigi. He gets to go to 3 courts in one day. That's pretty rare.
That's a record. I think that's a record.
3 in one day is, I've never heard of that. I mean, three
trifecta. Trifecta. You get Altoona, Pennsylvania, Blair County, Pennsylvania, Manhattan Criminal Court, where Daniel Penny was, and here's the federal building.
Yeah, I guess that's also one of the reasons why, you know, they put him on an airplane. I know they had said on TV, we want to avoid publicity, but, you know, Luigi had a busy schedule today, and obviously 5 or 6 hours driving might have impaired the ability to give him the full tour of Lower Manhattan, which he's apparently getting today.
Even though the New York judges might be willing to work past 4 o'clock for him, you know, unlike, you know, Judge Cannoni, who likes to leave at 4:05 and that's it, out the door, coats on.
Yeah, no, I've never seen a trifecta in one day. That's new. I've seen 2, rarely. 3 in one day in 2 states, both federal and state. That's wow. That's impressive.
Planes, trains, and all planes, helicopters, and automobiles.
Yeah, that's.
I guess he's in there now. They have the mics set up for outside the court, outside the courthouse. I don't know if anybody's going to come out and say anything, but so where do you think they're going to put him? Or you think they're going to put him at Rikers, or you think they're going to put him in the federal lockup where Diddy is?
You know, it depends. They can fight about it behind the scenes. It won't matter if he's in federal court. The state would have to do these complicated orders to produce and give it to the feds. It's a whole thing. And, you know, on the other hand, if he's in state court, it's the same thing. So it's going to be difficult. This is also the rare situation where, from the defense standpoint, this will be the first time or one of the rare times that you're begging to go to Rikers Island. I mean, this is Rikers Island.
Tell the viewers the difference between Rikers and, well, I guess it's not MCC anymore, right?
Yeah,
Where MDC?
It would be the MDC in Brooklyn, which is hell on earth. That is the absolute worst. Now,
that's the federal one, the one in Brooklyn, and Manhattan Detention Center. That's where Diddy is, right?
Right. The one in Manhattan is where, you know, Epstein, you know, met his end.
Oh, right. Where Epstein was, you know, took his own life.
Goes to Brooklyn. This, you know, the client doesn't want to go to Brooklyn federal, you know, jail. Although the fascinating story here, I mean, it's kind of a New York Post kind of tongue-in-cheek thing, and everybody knows this, but, you know, the 2 lawyers between Diddy and this guy, they're married.
Yeah.
And they have been for a million years. But if they wanted to make counsel visits in, you know, the Brooklyn MDC, if that's where Luigi gets sent, you know, it's only 1 commute instead of 2.
They could travel together. Yeah.
It's I mean, I'm half kidding, but like half not kidding. It's
right. Carpooling is a thing, you know, especially when you go into Brooklyn, you know. I don't know if you want to. When I was a young lawyer, quick story. When I was a young lawyer, I was sent to Rikers to visit a client who, not on a criminal case, on a civil case. Like he was slashed in prison by another prisoner, and my boss at the time sent me. She's like, "Okay, here you go. Go to Rikers, and you have to get on the bus. Like you have to park your car, and then you have to get on the bus with all the other people that are going to visit their loved ones at Rikers." And I got to Rikers, and I was like a very young lawyer, like I was freaking out. And I got there, and I saw the client, and then I got stuck for the count, so I couldn't leave.
And your day is over. Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, and I was like, "What's the count?" Like I had no idea.
Hey, gotta know where they all are at all times. You know, you
Yeah.
don't Carlito's Way type situation where
I was there for hours. I couldn't leave. I couldn't get back on that bus to get back to my car, and it was a terrifying thing. Yeah, but Rikers is a pretty scary place too.
Rikers is horrible, and it is harder to get to than the MDC. If for those, again, Rikers is an island in the East River with a tiny little bridge that connects to Queens, even though it's technically part of the Bronx. Don't ask me why. So you have to schlep out to like Elmhurst, Queens. And pretty much the only good thing that ever came from COVID was they created a much better video system so that if you need to speak to someone at Rikers, you can just do a video in a much
Really?
way than you did. So that's about the only good thing that came from COVID, is that for lawyers, dealing with Rikers is 1,000 times easier than it used to be, because it used to be a day killer. And if you do get stuck for the count, which can take hours, you're screwed. I mean, you're done. Yeah. I mean, that's still the case anywhere. I mean, that's every jail and every place. But at Rikers, there are so many dudes, you know, it's just,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah. The count is counting all the inmates to make sure they're all accounted for. Yeah. So if you're stuck there, you're stuck there until they're done counting, and it could take hours.
But the MDC is worse. The MDC is worse than Rikers.
Wow. So I don't know. I kind of think the feds are going to take over. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean,
You have like, you know, like
I mean, they're allowed.
they take precedence. I mean,
They can, and of course the federal judge is going to assert his or her dominance. That's just the way this works. You know, the interesting thing is they're not going to have a legal problem with this until one of these cases is going to get resolved. But if the feds take a plea to what in essence is the equivalent of a state court murder, which essentially it is, that's it. It's over. The state court case is done. So it's in many ways stunning that the two agencies are doing this at the same time on the same day with a race to filing. That's not common. I mean, there are times there have been overlaps. It's true, but we're not in this way for what in essence is the exact same conduct. And when the DA made it clear that they had an indictment, the feds felt compelled to right away file a complaint. And again, this is a case they easily could have just done an indictment. I mean, this guy's going to be remanded. If there was no federal case right now, he's going to be remanded on Rikers. They could just build their case. You know, a federal grand jury, as you know, it's pretty straightforward. It's all hearsay. An agent comes in and just basically reads a report and they indict. But they didn't do that. They wanted to rush and get in there now. And that doesn't look so good for the two agencies, to be honest with you. That looks,
well, doesn't look great for Bragg, but
it looks more embarrassing for them. And it, you know, again, following on the heels of Penny, and I think also a lot of people, I mean, it's not just me, have been kind of scratching their heads about, you're calling this guy a terrorist in a legal sense. I mean, one could argue that he's, you know, some form of a terrorist and whatever that means, but legally, New York's terrorism law, by the way, was enacted on September 17th of 2011. I mean, it was thrown together.
2001.
Right. Excuse me. Right after 9/11, within days. I mean, it clearly was meant for what you and others would consider like classic terrorists who just want to destroy the government, make these messages and wreak havoc. And, you know, to equate that with what appears to be a clearly premeditated murder by a half a lunatic who's pissed off the healthcare industry.
Right.
And, you know, I wrote this in the letter. You must have read this earlier. You know, as part of his wackadoo manifesto, he literally said I considered bombing someplace, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to harm innocent people.
Right.
Okay. Newsflash: a terrorist is going with the bomb. Okay. The whole
Terrorist
idea
doesn't give a duck. The whole idea is to take out as many
Right.
people as
this
possible.
guy had a problem with one individual for a very certain reason.
Right.
He never knew him. He never met him. He just happened to be the CEO of the largest, as it turns out, insurance company in America. So that's clearly a political execution, no question. But to equate that as his intent was literally to sow terror throughout the city, it certainly would. I mean, it would certainly. I mean, look, I remember the morning this happened saying, "You've got to be kidding me, a shooting on 6th Avenue in the mid 50s. You know, my office is at like 7th Avenue and 57th Street on Christmas, you know, Christmas season, tree lighting
day. They're going to light the tree.
During rush hour. That is the kind of thing that would freak out New Yorkers. But why would you make that an element of the case that you're now going to argue that his intent was to freak out? That's not a legal term. A certain segment of the civilian population, which we can only assume means employees or CEOs of the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
I mean, why the hell would you make that a literal element of the crime, knowing that there are these wackadoos who are embracing this lunatic as some kind of hero?
Yeah. Well, you know what else people hate? Auto insurance companies. How much did your auto insurance go up this year? You know what else people hate? Homeowners insurance company. Do you know how much it costs to get homeowners insurance on Long Island now after all these floods and all of these, you know, nationwide disasters that have happened, the fires, everything else? Homeowners insurance is astronomical. So, you know,
people lose, like, I'm not saying it's like literally frivolous to charge him with that, but should you really, in a case like this, be treating the penal law like a source for a law school exam, in a criminal law exam about what charges could you charge? I mean, you have an open and shut murder case against a lunatic. Okay. Why are you trying to give this guy a soapbox, give him a forum, run the risk of a runaway juror or two or three, and turn this into a spectacle? You don't need to.
You've got him on video committing the crime.
Yeah, you've got him on video. He's concealing his appearance. You know, he planned it out, and you know, by concealing his appearance, he tried to be careful. But you know, now that you look at it, he's pretty dumb. I mean, he took his mask off.
Yep.
You know, he left his property there. He left his fingerprints and DNA from Starbucks. I mean, this is not a smart guy. I mean, if you're willing to put a mask on, maybe you put a pair of like gloves on, for Christ's sake. I don't know.
Right.
You know, he held on to the gun. He had the manifesto. So, I mean, the evidence against him is as overwhelming as it gets. So you have a murder case. Get him 25 to life and be done with this guy.
If you are the defense attorney, which case would you rather try, the federal case or the state case?
Well, state case. Number one, for the reasons we just said, they've just thrown me a bone to at least play with something. You serve psych notice right away. You know, notice of you have 30 days from indictment, arraignment to serve notice of intent to use a psych defense. If I were there at the arraignment, by now she's met him. She knows the case, what it is. I mean, look, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Karen went on CNN like a week ago and said the guy's basically guilty.
We just played that before you came on. She said,
by the way,
it's obvious he did it. You know, he's only,
and, you know, she said I would use the psych.
Evidence is overwhelming, is what she said.
So that's correct, by the way. The legal analysis she made is correct. I'm sure in hindsight, when it turns out you're the one that gets hired, it's a little cringe when you've basically said on national TV that, you know, my client is guilty, but we're going to use, you know, an insanity defense. I don't fault her for it. Not her fault.
Maybe how she got hired too.
It may very well be. It's not, I mean, she anticipate getting hired when she said that. The point is, you would serve psych notice. You have been given a forum. You've been given an avenue to nullification to wrap around your other defense, the psych defense. There's no death penalty eligibility. The jury would be entirely people in Manhattan. The rules of evidence in New York criminal procedure under state law, New York is a very liberal, progressive state, if you will, with criminal procedure. There are many favorable evidentiary rules, rules of discovery that are not the case in federal court. This is the easiest question of the day to answer. If you're the lawyer, you want it in state court. The other reason you want it in state court is a much more practical reason. Karen worked at the Manhattan DA's office for like probably 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if she's ever been in federal court in her life. I don't know. I truly don't know. She left the DA's office after Cy Vance left, and Bragg, has his own people. So I don't know if she's ever been in federal court. Her husband has many times. Mark has tried many, many federal cases. But just as
It's a different animal. Federal court's a different animal. It's very strict. It's very formal. It's no joke.
And as a simple matter of comfort, this is human nature. Of course, she's going to be more comfortable in the courthouse that she, for lack of a better term, worked in for decades. So this is a ground ball answer. Now, the other question is, was she hired specifically because, the Manhattan DA's office inside out? I don't know. Well,
it's always a good reason.
That has changed dramatically, given that the feds are, on the case, as they say.
Right. All right. Let's see if we have any questions for you. Mama She's favorite word of the day. Thanks for the 10. Favorite word of the day, wackadoo. It's a great word. It's a great word, Mama She. There's nothing happening yet outside the courthouse. Selma Martin says, things are starting to happen in Grandma Killer trial in Oklahoma. Yep, I have that prepped. I have a whole bunch of stuff pulled on that. Hopefully, I'm going to get to that today or tomorrow. 2 days of preliminary hearings have taken place, and there was a lot of shocking testimony in that one. So thank you, Selma Martin, for the 5. Little Miss Red Velvet, thanks for the 10. Thanking us and the brilliant chat. Helped me through a difficult year. Love being a cupcake. It's your birthday Monday. Happy birthday, Little Miss Red Velvet. Happy birthday. Please all have a glass of champagne. We'll do that for you. Cheers, my dear. Clinton Nix says I'm wearing his favorite blouse. So classy and low. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the 5. I appreciate you. I guess we may wait around a couple of minutes and see if they come out and say anything, but so far, nothing.
Well, I mean, obviously he's going to be ordered detained. Now, has he been arraigned in state court?
I don't think so. I think they took him right to federal court.
There you go. So already you're seeing how this works. Okay. Mm-hmm. The New York State had an indictment first. They have been involved in the extradition process for a couple weeks first. The feds have a criminal complaint. Obviously, an indictment, forgetting that one is state, one is federal, an indictment is more impressive than a federal complaint. A complaint is just a hearsay, FBI agent saying this is what I believe the evidence is. An indictment is evidence presented to a grand jury who has found probable cause. And despite all of that, he's going to federal court first, where obviously he will be detained. And then the only issue is, are they going to take him straight to, 100 Center Street down the block, and then determine where he's going to be held. But I'm going to guess that he gets held at Rikers, to tell you the truth. If they're going to go to state court after, as a matter of logistics, why would you detain him in, federal court, take him out, bring him, even though it's like, a 30-second walk.
No, here come the attorneys. Let's see. Let's put them up.
They have to write a message.
That was it. I mean, the DA would come out, or
the U.S.
attorney. Oh, that's your investigator?
Yeah, no, he's the best. I won't out his name here, but if you know,
don't do that, because you know what happens.
Well, whatever, he's there, so he doesn't care. But he's the best. I didn't know she was on crutches. That's unfortunate with dealing with all this. But my point before they came out was, it's hard to believe they would send him to federal court, to leave him there, take him out of custody, bring him to state court, and bring him back to federal court. I wonder if they're just going to now bring him to Manhattan Supreme Court and then put him on the dreaded bus.
The bus to Rikers.
The dreaded bus.
Oh, man.
Well, look, she didn't say much other than, like, thank you for the support. The only troubling concern about that, and I think Olivia might have even just alluded to this, and I just happened to look over there in the comments for a second, is they did say stuff on TV. Now, again, the dynamic has changed because now she's representing the guy, but that's tough. I mean, because any reporter, if they're doing their job, is going to say, has your evaluation changed? Do you still agree that he's basically factually guilty? And those are tough questions. There's no good answer for that because, again, nothing she said as an analyst was stupid at all. It was all correct. But as his advocate, that's a PR disaster.
Maybe it's a good lesson, for defense attorneys to not go on and opine about a case until we know who's been hired as the defense attorney. I don't know, because you never know when your phone's going to ring, right, Mark?
We never know, but I don't know in all seriousness whether she could have contemplated that, his parents are watching CNN, love me and think, I'm the one. Who knows? I mean, look,
exactly.
You know me. Any lawyers like big cases, right? I mean, do. And I don't fault anyone who takes a case like that. The lawyer is not the client. This is a tough client, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But, you're going to be somewhat conflicted in your mind, too, because there is no way that any lawyer who does this for a living is not thinking, are you kidding me that they're treating this guy as a hero? Okay, there are defendants who get arrested that are heroes. Okay. I mean, I had years ago clients who were in the military and mistakenly brought a gun into New York. Okay. They made a mistake. And these guys were like good, honest people who made a mistake, but you could rant and rave publicly that this is outrageous and love the support. Now, ironically, one of the DAs at the time who believed he should go to jail and should be prosecuted was Karen. So, what does that tell you? But those are all stories. Well, you'd have no idea. Those are stories for another day. But, they have a tough job. No question.
Yeah, Mama Sheik, happy birthday to 2 of your kids. Happy birthday. Thanks for the 10. 2 birthdays this week. Happy birthday to both of your babies. His mother had reported him missing. I thought this was interesting, too. He had been missing since like July 1st, and his mother didn't report him missing till like November.
It's weird, although
he went off the grid, for a while, and I don't know. He obviously had some stuff and things going on internally, and I don't know. I kind of like, I don't know. Maybe I'm a lot more on top of my kids than a lot of mothers are, but I mean, he's only 26. He's like still a baby to me. You know?
Weird, and he moved out to Hawaii, which is nice place to go, but it's a little strange for someone from Maryland or whatever. But I mean, if he kind of had some kind of break and disappeared in July, this is all stuff that as far as they think for their psychiatric defense that their expert is going to hone in on and try to turn this into some kind of psychotic break, where the problem they have amongst everything else is that this psychotic break apparently would have had to have lasted from August until December.
Right.
Guess what? That's tough. Okay. That's kind of a long time. And, when you try to say that, in my medical opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, those are the words of the last couple of weeks, right? We saw
right.
that that he's not criminally responsible because he couldn't appreciate the nature and consequences of his actions and all of those buzzwords. That all gets wiped out by the fact, well, he clearly knew it was wrong by concealing his identity. Why conceal yourself? He knew it was wrong by presenting a fake ID. He didn't want to get caught. He knew it was wrong by fleeing and then hiding in Central Park, getting rid of the evidence, getting out of town. This is all evidence of someone who may be crazy in a colloquial sense, but in a legal sense, if a jury focuses on the law, that's not even close to meeting the threshold of, what lay people call legal insanity.
Right. Not knowing that his actions were wrong at the time of his actions.
Yeah. I mean, there's just too much evidence that would suggest that this is too well thought out, too planned. And of course, with his manifesto, this guy's proud of it. I mean, you know, he thinks he did a mitzvah here. He feels good about himself. You know, maybe that evaluation has changed since he's been arrested, but you know, in a legal sense, any psych defense is better than a whodunit, obviously.
Yeah, too late for that.
Just because, you know, the odds are better than zero, such that they're like 0.001, doesn't make them good.
Yeah.
Even better.
And the premeditation, the planning, the organization, all of it. It says here he's 5'10" and 135. This was the missing person case that his mother opened. Said she last had contact with him on July 1st, but she didn't make the report until November 18th, 2024. I mean, that doesn't really mean anything other than I guess I'm more of a helicopter than a lot of moms. And it just says here, Kathleen stated she last spoke to Luigi on July 1st, 2024, and that Luigi worked for the True Car located at 124 Montgomery, which is permanently closed and the main number disconnected. Kathleen does not know where Luigi frequents. I thought they had said originally when they were looking for this guy, because I did a live stream like the exact day that they were doing the manhunt. And I thought they said he was over 6 feet, but
I don't know. But if the mother didn't report him missing after no contact for 4 months, it also suggests to you that their relationship was probably strained. I mean, also, this is one of the problems for the defense. If she didn't talk to him in this critical period of July and August when he was planning it, then she's not going to be a very good source on describing any psychotic break or any red flags of he's, you know, going down this descent into madness, because she's going to get cross-examined by this missing persons report, which would be any prosecutor would make mincemeat out of her and say, you have no idea what was going on in your son's life at a part of 4 months. In fact, you didn't even report him missing until whatever, basically right before Thanksgiving. So that's no disrespect to her, but usually in these kinds of cases, family become critical witnesses by talking about the descent into madness and what they perceived, and she's not in a position to have perceived anything by her own admission.
Exactly. Mike Redot's coming in with a question off topic. Hi, guys. Could Hank have been hired because he's a defense attorney and willing to fight for guilty parties, the Commonwealth and the McAlberts?
Well, now. First of all, we don't know if he's admitted. We don't know if he's admitted in the state of New York. Certainly, I would assume he's not admitted in the Southern District of New York, so he would have to be pro hoc, like some of us have, go through that lovely process. But
wait, is he? Oh, do you think he's asking about in this case? Could he have been hired? I thought we were okay. I misunderstood the question.
I think this is tongue in cheek, being funny, because he still has a private practice going. I assume he could, putting aside pro hoc and all that stuff. I would assume that he probably could be hired if he chose to do it in Massachusetts. Whether that makes
is he still like running his criminal defense practice while he's the special, you know, assistant district attorney of Norfolk County in the Karen Reed case? I mean, how can he possibly have time?
Well, that's a different issue. If he feels like he has the time, I think he's allowed to. I don't know what his full situation is. That would be a terrible look, obviously. So I don't think he would, but I mean, I get the point. There's just kind of a weirdness around the whole situation in terms of the prosecution of Karen Reed. That's clear.
Yeah. Interesting. Christina says, no disrespect, but you don't understand estranged men at all with adult children. Lots to unravel here. Yeah. I mean, no, I'm not.
I guess my response to that is I may be, but the real relevant point here is by having no contact with him for whatever reason, she's not in a position, presumably, to shed light to help the defense to say that I witnessed or listened to him or saw things that suggest a pattern of leading to where he ended up. Now, is she competent to say he had a debilitating injury and this and that? I don't know. I don't know the timeline of his life and what happened. I'm just simply saying that you always want to talk to the people closest to a defendant who you're arguing is legally crazy to try to establish how that could be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think Richie said, sorry, off topic. I just got here. I think he did mean in the Karen Reed case.
Oh.
That's why they hired Hank.
Oh.
You know, I don't know. I don't know. All right. I guess we're not going to see anything more because there's nothing more to see. So thanks you guys for coming in. Any final thoughts? I'm just going to say that the give, send, go for Luigi Mangione is up to almost $160,000. I'm a little mind blown by the hero's welcome that he's kind of getting by so many it seems to be young people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can call it a final thought, but he's entitled to his presumption of innocence and all of that. Look, the evidence that he did it is, let's be honest, it's off the charts. As you've noted earlier, you know, even his current lawyer noted that. We all know it, whatever, but he's still entitled to the presumption of innocence, due process, all of that. But given that he is charged in 2 jurisdictions with basically an assassination, I mean, let's call it what it is. This is
that's exactly what it is.
Targeted execution of a guy who had a job in a field that many people don't like. I get it. But for anyone to condone or think that this guy is a hero or anything other than almost certainly a cold-blooded sociopath or psychopath killer without a shred of remorse, who thinks it's okay to just walk down the streets of Midtown Manhattan and blow someone away after contemplating apparently blowing him up and anyone else with a bomb, that he's some kind of hero, speaks to how freaking delusional our society is. And it's not a political thing. Nobody cares about, you know, my opinion of, you know, United Healthcare or yours or whatever. But if you think it's okay to just walk down and shoot a father of 2 young kids in the back because he makes more money than you in a field that you find gross, you need to check your head. I mean, this is sick. And to see these, you know, college type kids out there, you know, treating him like some kind of hero or getting tattoos.
The tattoos.
This is just
wild.
It's pathetic. And these people are basically brain dead. They don't understand the first thing about anything. They're like sheep. Okay. Anybody who thinks because this guy published a manifesto saying I had a bad back and I got hurt and I hate the insurance. Guess what? A lot of people hate insurance companies, but don't go around targeting the CEO for execution.
Right.
And, you know, what if he hit a baby down the street? Would you say that was okay? Or do you draw the line at, well, you know, he had a good intent to kill the CEO, but it's a shame he hit a baby? Everybody who supports him needs to check their heads. Give him the presumption of innocence. Give him a fair trial. Give him due process. If you think he's not guilty, that's wonderful. If you feel bad for him because he's a good-looking, buff kid, you need your head checked. That's just not the standard to think that someone deserves your sympathy or is innocent. So
yeah, a lot of people have back pain, and back pain can make you crazy, from what I hear. But
it may make
with back pain goes around killing people.
Back pain may make you crazy, but it doesn't make you a hero for shooting a man. By the way, in the back.
Yeah.
Can we be clear about that? If this was a, you know, proud killing, then, you know, walk up to him, tell him your piece and let him look at you. But shooting a man walking to work in the back and then again in the back when he goes down and then one more in the back and then running away with your face masked, that's a coward, not a hero. And it's probably a murder and a coward, not a hero. So there's nothing to celebrate this guy for, nothing. Give him due process, give him presumptions of innocence, but he's no hero.
Preach. Preach. All right. Well, that's all I have for today for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Congratulations on being published. Was this the first time you were published in the New York Times?
In the Times, yeah, I've written some of these for some other outlets. But by the way, just to give people who, you know, it's funny, over the past several months, I've been attacked by people as, you know, a wackadoo, you know, right-wing nut job. I've been attacked as a wackadoo left-wing nut job. You know, you are like, you are a lunatic Trump supporter. You are a lunatic.
Wings.
You are a lunatic Trump hater. Just to give you perspective, in one day, okay, I gave an on-air interview to Fox News and wrote a piece for the New York Times, which are about as opposite as it can get. And for some reason, you know, they wanted to speak to this real estate lawyer. So I'm not, you know, just call it like it is.
Tracy, thanks for the 5. Someone step into his position and business as usual. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he really changed by doing this. You know, he's making some big political statement, but nothing's going to change over there at United Healthcare, except for they're going to probably send their guys out with security a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, real quick, I mean, I think that's part of the argument that the Manhattan DA is going to say that, you know, CEOs of insurance companies, they took their names down, understandably so. They hire more security. They become more low key. But that is the effect of the people reacting to what happened. That is not indicative of the intent of the defendant to sow terror. That is a reaction. And I hate to get all crazy, but this is similar to like the whole Massachusetts witness intimidation problem, with the effect on the alleged victim or people that are impacted rather than the intent of the alleged bad doer. Okay. Terrorism charge has to go to this guy's intent, not the fact that people were freaked out. Of course, people are freaked out. But let me tell you something. If the head of a large company was executed in Midtown Manhattan, like Mr. Thompson was, guess what? People get freaked out. Either way, you're not more or less freaked out because, in fact, this is going to sound crazy. The general public was relieved when they found out that Mr. Thompson was the CEO of the largest healthcare company in America, because they thought, thank God, there's a reason for this. It's not a random whatever, like, as opposed to a terrorist generally who does want to create trouble, but just starts shooting the corner or doing whatever. As sick as that sounds, people were relieved. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. It's just like, you know, it's a lunatic with a very narrow problem, you know, like the O.J. Simpson problem, right? He had a very narrow problem.
Not like the wackadoo during the Daniel Penny trial who ran around stabbing 3 random people on all sides of Manhattan with his butcher knives out and, you know, for no reason at all. That's pretty scary too.
That freaks out the public more once you learn who Thompson was, because once you learn that that's targeted specifically because of his position, that is less frightening than somebody on the subway who is erratic and out of control, threatening to kill people, and has a documented history of like attacking elderly people and beating up people to a pulp, and who clearly was mentally ill and should have been institutionalized or incarcerated rather than, you know, threatening people on the subway. So yeah, I mean, this whole idea that this is a terror case, this is a lunatic with a very narrow political problem who acted upon it.
Well, here's an interesting question, and this person, since I have it, I know that the trolls are out in full force. I have it set to like to be a sub for at least 2 days to be participating in the chat. So Richard Atkinson says, "Do you teach your children that goon CEOs can murder thousands of people per year?"
Well, no, I don't teach my children that CEOs are
I don't either.
Murdering people, thousands of people a year. What I will tell you is that if you believe that, that's unfortunate, and we don't want that. But the way America works and any civilized society works is that you don't get to decide that that's true, that rhetoric somehow justifies you to walk around with a loaded gun and walk up to the guy and shoot him in the back. If you want to live in a society of anarchy with no rules and no laws, where we can all mete out justice on any moment because my opinion is that a CEO is doing something terrible. No, Richard, I don't think that justifies Mangione to do that or makes him a hero.
Great. And then Juliette Dumont coming in, bringing everybody back down to earth. It's mind-blowing. This is even a conversation in America. We all know what's right and wrong in America. We do not take justice in our own hands. Get the duck out. Stop playing stupid and making excuses. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
where was the security team? I don't know. Where's the blame for the 24/7 insurer paid the customer security that Thompson already had? Where were they? I don't know. I haven't heard a lot about that, actually.
I don't know, but I also know that, you know, again, if you know how New York is set up, He's staying at the hotel across the street. You know, he's basically walking across 6th Avenue at 6:40 in the morning on a Wednesday or whatever it was. You know, this is not The Godfather, you know, where you see the scene where, you know, after Don Corleone was shot, that anytime Sonny wanted to, you know, go to one of his dalliances before they got him, he's peeking his head out and they have like 17 guards shuffling to the car. I don't think that a CEO, even of a company that many people dislike, that's true, would have thought for a second that, you know, in the middle of Midtown Manhattan at almost 7 o'clock in the morning on a work day during Christmas season, that some lunatic is going to be laying in wait to execute me by shooting me in the back.
Agreed. Show Katie says, if he was a 300-pound pimply person, I guarantee you not one person would have a tattoo of them on their body. I don't know.
You know,
sometimes we have to laugh because otherwise the stuff that we cover is so.
You wonder if there's, I don't know if I agree with that 100%, but because again, the people hate insurance and, you know, celebrate people who are not good people who do terrible things because they think it's justified. Yeah. But the fact that he looks like he does, I mean, there was an interview right after this happened and Mangione was identified where, I mean, you have, this is not a sexist thing, I'm stating facts, where you had, I think, one female reporter talking about his abs and like literally discussing about, you know, how hot he was. And it's just gross. I mean, first of all, reporter, you should be terminated immediately from whoever you are working for. If you can't even objectively, if you objectify rather than report objectively, you should just be, you're not cut out for it. But yeah, I think if he didn't look the way he looked, there would probably be less attention on him.
Yeah, if he looked more like the Unabomber, it would be a different story, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Ted Kaczynski was, you know, different looking.
He was a type. He was definitely a type.
Well, he fit.
Final thoughts?
No, my final thoughts were my rant about, like, stop making this guy out to be a hero. It's pathetic.
Yeah, agreed. All right, you guys. Thanks, mods, for keeping it classy today. Appreciate each and every one of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash the like button on your way out. And remember to be kind to other people. Stay cool, stay kind, stay classy. It's not hard. You guys can do it. I know you can, because you're better than all the rest of them. Peace, everyone. Have a great night.
Okay. Take care.